Hello, Mayor Jeff Schielke speaking to you on Friday, August 7th, 2020. And I'm here with what's become my weekly report to the community. Uh, I wish many times I could find something that I could begin this whole thing on a positive note. Uh, I would suggest that there's been some nice things happen. Personally, I've had some nice experiences this past week. But there's been a lot of things that have been somewhat negative that have kind of come to fruition or taken hold over the last few weeks. And I guess I just want to speak to some of that right at the moment, because as I go out in the community and people have a tendency to want to share their observations with me or tell me stuff that they've observed or whatever, uh, there's a negative tone in a lot of people, and I can't blame them for having it, given specifically the COVID crisis that the United States and the world is facing right now. And for whatever reasons, there doesn't seem to be any easy answers to this. And there's always a new twist and turn in it, and nobody seems to really have, I don't think, any strong degree of comfort that we really are ahead of it and getting control of it. So I'm speaking to you kind of in that realm this week, and I just wanted to pay a word of tribute to us as a community and the thinking that is going on in this community. Uh, I, when I was coming into the office here a few minutes ago, I ran into some folks down in the lobby, and they were telling me that they had the experience. They had driven into DuPage County this morning, over into the Oak Brook and Hinsdale and Clarendon Hills area, and they were aghast at how much traffic they ran into while they were over there. And then they got in their car and they drove back to Batavia, and they got back here and they found Wilson Street was backed up on both the east and the west sides, going in either direction. And so they joked that Batavia's traffic counts this morning were probably in comparison to some of the things they had experienced in Oak Brook, because there just seemed to be a lot of traffic in both places, which I suppose in the theme of things is a good thing. But what I wanted to speak specifically about is that as a community, we've lost some stuff this year that I think many of us treasure, and that's some of the memories that we have and things that we weren't able to do. I know Batavia High School was not able to have a full pomp and circumstance high school graduation. I understand they did a nice job with what they had to deal with, but again, it wasn't what anybody had always dreamt of and wanted, and had been the tradition, and hopefully in 2021 we'll be right back up there. Another thing that I'm told we had to do is make a decision that we're not going to open the Batavia Fine Arts Center for public programs this year, and that's a thing that I know many people, specifically lifelong Batavians, look very much forward to. It's a place where not only do they get a great program under Dom Katera and a wide variety of subjects and always entertaining, but they get to see and meet a lot of people, and they get to hug and handshake and talk with old friends and neighbors and whatever. So it's just become kind of a gathering point for the community, and now that seems to have been shut down for a while. I'm also told that Batavia High School Hall of Honor for this year has to be postponed. And I think one of them that's really in the face of a lot of people is the Batavia, the school district sports program as a total. And I know and I really give the school district a lot of credit. They are trying their very hardest they can to put together as much stuff as they can do. But I guess the thing that really is hurting is that the senior high school football program has been delayed until spring. And that's always been a high fall moment for people in Batavia, and we've had such great success with 2 state championships in the recent past that that's a program that a lot of Batavians wear on their sleeve, and they wear it with great pride. That's something that we really want to have and to foster. And I know people have moved to Batavia so their kids could be on the football team. So there's a lot of factors in there. So I just want to pay tribute to the community's response to that, and the fact that there's a lot of sadly disappointed people, but everybody's really trying, as I'm finding, trying to keep a stiff upper lip and says, well, it'll get better, and the school's trying harder, and the kids will get their experience sooner than later, or later than sooner, I guess I should say. But as somebody who tries to feel what the ear of the community is, I really think that we should pride ourselves in our attitude, that we aren't all screaming and howling and getting mad and being all upset about all this stuff, because quite honestly, there's nothing we can do. So I just want to take my hat off to all of you who have had a disappointment this year, and this year has been full of them, and this will go down, I'm sure, in history as a memorable moment in our past. The next thing I want to jump to is not get off of that sign, but I want to go over to the whole COVID-19 thing for a minute. As all of us know, there really hasn't been a solid response to it yet. There's varying opinions as to how impacting it is. I constantly run into people who tell me they've been advised to quarantine for 2 weeks because they may or may not have had a experience of some potential contagious person that they were next to at a party or in a business or at a, whatever they were doing. And so, this tracing that's going on, and some people are getting called and didn't even know that they were near anybody that had it. And so there's just been a lot of confusion. And I just want to again take my hat off to the kind hearts and the beautiful people of Batavia who really are trying hard to work within that realm and understand what they can and cannot do. And I think it just speaks well to all the people that are out there. I had the opportunity this morning to talk to some of the residents up to Homestead who were off campus, and they were very complimentary toward the way the Homestead administration is running it. But, they made the same comment that as a result, we have to live with what we got. We're trying the best we can to keep ourselves away from it. And the nice thing they feel about at the Homestead, because of the lives they lead and the care and intensity that they take in trying to make sure that they don't get themselves near anything contagious. If they do hear some rumor that somebody says, well, you may have been near somebody that had it, well, they can quickly have themselves checked. But most of them think that, if they really abide by the rules, and it seems to be working because they've had a very, very low rate of COVID up there. So as we have in most of the other Batavia senior living communities. And so I'm very proud as the mayor of the community to note that we've got basically 5 senior living communities now in operation. We got another one being built out there behind the Walmart as I'm talking. And we've not had a lot of COVID. And today I checked the latest numbers. We are still the lowest full town in Kane County as far as number of COVID reported cases that we have in Batavia. We're still just a little over 200 in comparison to some of our neighbors who are in the big numbers. And so I take my hat off and I thank to all the Batavians that are out there for all that you're doing as you go forward and trying to keep this out. One thing I would like to share, there is some effort by the state and the federal government to try to help out financially with some of this, and I wonder sometimes how much finances either one of them really have to help out. But a case in point, as the chairman of the Kane County Council of Mayors, I recently have been sitting in up at the Kane County Government Center in some discussions with the Kane County Board, and it's the committee under the chairmanship of John Holscheid, who I think is doing a very nice job with it. But the Kane County received $92,900,000 to help cover COVID-connected expenses, and this can be anything from paying for paramedics to, anything that has anything to do with the disease. And so they're now up there meeting, trying to figure out how they're going to disperse the money and how it's going to be programmed and what it's going to be doing. They're under some time constraints because they have to have all this money out into the public by the end of the year. So you'll probably hear something in the next couple of weeks. I believe the county board is maybe going to take some final action on it this coming week as far as what the numbers are going to be. Some of the money is going to be distributed directly to all the incorporated cities and villages in Kane County. Looks like we are going to get, in rough numbers, maybe about $1.5 million in Batavia. And needless to say, we can certainly use that to cover a lot of expenses we've had as far as the paramedic program and buying masks and buying signs and other things that we've done, protective measures for the community. So it's going to be cover some of our expenses that we've had that we wouldn't have had otherwise had we not had the COVID. But one thing that the county's doing is that they're going to designate some of this money for specifically non-for-profit organizations. And the last number I saw was they were going to try to appropriate about $2 million. And then they're also going to, I'm so led to believe, offer maybe $8 million to businesses who can show that they've had some COVID-related expenses. And so I would just alert the Batavia businessmen out there that there may be an opportunity here in the next few weeks to apply to the county to make up some loss of revenue that you've experienced because of the COVID issue. But again, these are all preliminary numbers. It hasn't been finalized, and so I'm not sure what the final numbers are going to be, but there is a program. The Kane County Board is trying to put it together, and it's a very complex and complicated issue because they're having to try to deal with census counts and unincorporated areas, and there's just a lot of moving parts to this thing. So I have nothing but positive things to say about the process so far, and I appreciate all the willingness of all the county department heads and County Chairman Lawson and everybody else who's had to deal with a variety of situations involving it, and it seems to be going along, and I'm sure that money will be honestly and fairly distributed throughout the county in the way that the county board says in the near future. But I just wanted to alert specifically Batavia businessmen and Batavia not-for-profits that there may be an opportunity to apply for some money there. That in a nutshell is kind of the messages I guess I wanted to leave for this week, as this thing about Batavia history has become very popular. I'm amazed at the number of comments and questions I get about it. So I've found a whole bunch of stories I can end my program with each week here, and one today I'd like to talk about is the history of schools in Batavia. And what's interesting about schools is schools have had, kind of indirectly, a major impact on two city services. One, the municipal water system, and secondly, the fire department. And it all goes back, and I got some pictures I'm going to show. This is the East Side Elementary School, which was built in 1893 over at Washington Avenue and State Street. Now, this building it was a 3-story limestone building with a belfry on the top of it, as you can see. And it stood in this location from 1860 till 1893, when on January 10th of that year, somehow something got into up around the belfry area and a roof fire started. And the kids were in the school when the fire started, but because the fire was above them, they were able to safely evacuate all the kids out of the school. But as things quickly developed, it was kind of a windy day, so I am told, and pretty soon the whole roof was on fire, and before it was all over with, the whole school had burned to the ground. And this is what the school looked like after the fire. And you can see there's some men standing in front of it, and the bells laying in the front yard, and it had fallen down and made a terrible noise, so I am told. There's this kind of a cute story, you use that word about a fire, about this. There was two people in there that were cousins. One was named Guy Condi, whose family had lived in Batavia since 1835, and the other one was Louise White, who was a descendant of the Condi family, and she was a school person in the school in 1893 when it burned down. Obviously the school, later she came back to teach at it, and later the school was named in her honor, the subsequent schools. But Louise White always told the story that in the early 1890s, there wasn't good time keeping in the school. So the kids had a fundraiser, and they bought a big clock that they put up in the second floor in the school office. And the day of the fire, supposedly everybody ran out of the burning building, and then Guy Condi decided, whoa, the clock's still in the building. So he went darting back into the building and grabbed the clock off the wall and brought it back out safely. And so when he came out, his cousin Louise White said to him, Guy, what were you doing running back into that burning building? And he said, I am saving time. So that was kind of the unique little story with that one. But from this fire, this caused a lot of sentiment in Batavia. And probably the biggest sentiment was the community had to stand there and watch the school burn down because it didn't have an in-ground pumped community water system. And so they had some referendums prior to the fire to put in a community water system, and they were voted down. But after the fire, they had another vote, and it passed overwhelmingly. And so the fire at the East Side School historically gets a lot of the credit for the first installation of the Batavia water system in 1894, 95, 96 timeframe. Following that, the school was rebuilt. And this is what it looks like today over on North Washington Avenue. And obviously it stayed as a school from 1894 when this became the second edition till 1978 when the new Louise White School, which is now in place up at North Prairie and Latham Street, was opened. And this building has been a variety of users. And currently it's occupied by Matter Products and the music school that Jeff Matter runs up at the back end of it. And it's a nice use for the building. It has a lot of history associated with it. But this is the story of the East Side School. But one of the other things that happened after the fire, because the community decided that the children in school was one of the more valuable things they needed to protect, they made a decision, instead of having one fire station down on the island in the middle of town, that they'd build two fire stations, one on each of the playgrounds of the school. So if there was a fire in either one of the schools, the fire station was right on the playground. And so guess what? In 1860, this school was built on the west side of town over on what was then South Washington Street, later changed to Lincoln Street. It's now where the parking lot is for the Bethany Lutheran Church, behind the Congregational Church, that big open area. And this was the first school that was built in this location. And this one was, again, the same limestone type of building. It was 3 stories, and it had a constructed basement with classrooms in it. And it also had a second addition built to it, which was to the east, and this has a big belfry which faced what today would be the back parking lot of the Congregational Church. And again, because of the fire we had had in 1893, which got us the community water system, when they went to a 3-story school building in this location, they added fire escapes. So you can see on the West Side School they had fire escapes. And additionally, they had a fire station on the grounds of the West Side School. And so on February 4th, 1913, so the story goes, some bird was flying around and he had his nest up in the belfry of the school here. And he went someplace, and there's several stories of what happened. I won't get into those at the moment, but he picked up a burning ember as he was trying to pick up some kind of a piece of meat by a fire, and he flew this piece of meat and this burning ember back to his nest in the belfry and dropped him in there. And in a few minutes, the belfry of the West Side School was on fire. So Batavia got all panicked and said, oh, heavens forbid, here we go all over again. Well, 2 things were in its favor. Number one, by then in 1913, we had a public water system with fire hydrants, which pressure on them, and we also had the fire station right on the school grounds. So it all worked out. The firemen got to the fire station, they got their hose out, they hooked it to the fire hydrant, and were able to charge into the school and stop the fire as it was just chunks of it were starting to fall down the belfry. And they got the fire out in the school belfry. That's kind of an interesting story, I think, because number one, it speaks to life's experiences of how things happen, and you come back and suddenly here again you're finding your need to make improvements. And so in the case of Batavia, I would suggest we have a early municipal water system. And we have a fire department, which today is an ISO Class 1, which is rated as best as it can be in the United States of America to Class 1. And we, as you've recently been seeing over on Main Street and parts of the southwest side and on South Prairie Street, the city has been replacing some water lines and water mains. And the line we recently have yanked out of Main Street was put in 1913, I guess it was. We thought the age of that one was. So we have, started replacing all the old stuff, and I think that's very wise investments as a community that we go forward and do these types of stuff. So today, I guess I want to just end and wish everybody a good week. I really appreciate the opportunity to keep this conversation rolling. I know I have some people that faithfully watch it every week and then share with me what they think they've heard in it, and whether they heard the right thing or not remains to be seen, but I sometimes have fun kind of talking with them and discussing what they heard and what I really said. It's been an education for me, so I thank Batavia for watching, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Thanks.